doing, which is to say, if I had 11 months good functioning, clean time before,
Yes.
I can do that again. And in fact, all the data say that the more times you keep trying, you increase your likelihood of that success being more sustained, and that's really, really important. Patients say, why can't I just stop? I've lost so much. I've paid such a high price. Parents say, why can't they just stop? They've completely wrecked their lives, our lives too. Why can't they just stop? And what we're beginning to understand now at the level of the brain is that there are a lot of cards that are stacked in the wrong direction here.
I'm so strong-willed in such other things that people could actually, there's people that would say to you, yeah, he's strong-willed in this way,
So
and that
why
way,
can't
and
he
others.
be strong-willed this way?
Right, exactly.
So it's very important for
Right,
people
that
to
would-
try to understand it's not a matter of moral fiber or character or just wanting it enough. You've got
Okay.
parts of the brain here that
Yes.
think when they see these signals for drug that that's as important as a relationship, as the best food you ever saw. It's a trick that's played on the brain, and in a way that tends to leave out this decision-making part of your brain. So in the brain, we have these two important systems. The GO system, the ancient GO circuit for helping us respond to natural rewards that are so important for our survival. And the STOP system, the more recent frontal lobe system that's important for helping us consider when it's important not to go, not to act on the pull of that reward. When things are working right, the GO circuitry and the STOP circuitry really are interconnected and really talking to each other to help you weigh the consequences of a decision and decide when to go or not to go. So it's not that they're separable, they're interactive, they're interlinked at all times. It's just that it's interesting with our patient situation, it is as though they have become functionally disconnected. It is as though the GO system is sort of running off on its own, is a rogue system now, and is not interacting in a regular, seamless, integrated way with the STOP system.
This is the trigger, all of this around me. And you can turn around and look at all of that, and all of that's the trigger because all of this is where I'm from. And I've always used in this area. So you imagine the trigger is here. The trigger is not only up here, the trigger is when I walk out, open my eyes, and what I see.
The patient sees, smells, experiences things that remind them of their drug of abuse. And instead of being able to say, wait a minute, think about what happened last week. You lost your job, you almost lost your life. Instead, the STOP system doesn't seem to get into the picture at all. It's all about GO. One of the exciting things about now, in terms of our understanding addiction, is that for the first time in all of human history, we can peek inside the brain and see what may be broken. And if we can see what's broken, we have an idea about how to go about fixing it. We wanted to understand how little does it take to get this sensitive reward circuit activated and off to a head start. So what we've noticed in the past year is that the system can be activated when we show pictures that are as short as 33 milliseconds, with things that are so short that they are outside awareness. So what's really difficult here for the STOP system is we know that the message doesn't even have a chance to get up to the frontal lobes for them to weigh in. It's coming in under the radar before you have a chance to mount a defense. So what's so impressive to me is that this GO system is so incredibly sensitive that while many of the things we experience are multiple seconds long, they don't have to be to get it going. And for our patients, I think it will be a helpful piece of news because for them, they sometimes couldn't point to the cue or label the cue that set off this craving state. If this kind of moment arises so quickly, we need something to be in place to sort of bring things into a manageable range before the challenge of a go moment. We've begun to study a medication that would help quiet things down, that would sort of like tune down the volume on the go system. This medication called baclofen, it's familiar, it's been around a long time, but we found that it can reduce the activity in this system a little bit, bringing it sort of into a more manageable range. So what this picture shows is that in patients who are untreated, who have no medication, who see half-second cocaine cues, the brain has an intense dialogue. One way to think about this picture is that you're seeing a visual representation of let's go for it. And you can tell that it's a very intense dialogue because of these very hot spots. On the other hand, when we look at patients who are treated for 7 days with baclofen, what you can see is that now this intense conversation has been reduced to a whisper. It's not that the brain is dead, there's activity, but instead of go, 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 it's, I don't know, doesn't seem like it's worth going. And so the hope is that you would have a chance for the frontal lobe to do its thing, to be able to weigh in and have a chance to put into place good decision making.
I do not want to live my life under the grips of my addiction. I will be an addict, probably. I will be an addict all my life, but I want to not be an addict using.
So the hope of the future is medications and behavioral treatments that can combine to literally reset the brain.
This is me in the 6th grade. I was kind of high in that picture. Vizine's all you need.
Of all of the mental diseases that I've seen, there's nothing that I have seen that disrupts more a family than having a kid who's addicted. It can be drugs, or actually it could be alcohol.
I just experimented with all of them, like X, meth, mushrooms. It's just the one that I liked the best was bud because it just it was a calming feeling. Like I had racing thoughts all the time and just chilled me out, and I liked that feeling. Yeah, I remember I took 10 caps of shrooms, and that's enough to kill you. So I just thought, I was like, wow, I'm amazed that I'm still alive after that.
The adolescent brain is different from that of an adult. And that leads to behaviors that definitively put them at much higher risk to want to try drugs than the brain of an adult.
They have even less override of their impulsivity, and probably from factors that existed before they used drugs and exacerbated by using drugs.
Dylan was turning 10 and a half when his birth father, left him. He left without giving his kids any word, and then he started to withdraw, and he went into a depressed state that we didn't recognize at first. And when he was in 5th and 6th grade, he started using at the grade school various drugs that were available, and then even alcohol that he could find. And he did this for, well, up to present day. But he used any type of drug, anything he can get his hands on. He was known as a cutter, and we found out a lot of adolescent teens are doing that. And he thought it would relieve stress, but it did nothing more than leave permanent marks. And then he started being aggressive again towards himself, by cutting his face. He burned his face with a needle. He took it out on things that he knew he wouldn't hurt people, but he would either hurt himself or material things.
If you look at kids coming into treatment, they're characterized by having multiple problems. It's not one thing. Alcohol drug use may not even be their most severe problem. They may have problems with depression, with suicide ideation. They may be cutting themselves or burning themselves or mutilating themselves. About a third of them do. They may have problems with anger and controlling their tempers. They may have problems running away or following rules and orders. So it tends to not be one thing, but multiple things.
Dylan got in trouble last fall. Basically, he was starting to have rage episodes and where he couldn't control his anger at all.
The day Dylan decided to break our windows with a slingshot wrist rocket, he had an argument over doing a chore. It was a very simple task, but he didn't feel he needed to do it. So he snuck outside, shot out the windows, and while doing so, I had to go out and confront him. And he was holding the weapon, aiming it at me. I wasn't sure if he was gonna shoot me or what, but he didn't. His mom actually called the sheriff, and that was very hard to turn in your own son.
I felt like I was, like the world was on my shoulders, like, oh, I am this responsible adult for this child and this kid, and he's doing this stuff, and there's nothing I can do.
Less than 1 in 10 adolescents who already meet clinical criteria for abuse or dependence are showing up to treatment. Now, what that means is we're doing a bad job of identifying and getting your kids who have problems into treatment. This is very difficult because it's not one thing. Part of it may be that parents and teachers are hoping positively that they'll grow out of it. Unfortunately, this is a very risky thing to do. It's much more important to overreact possibly.
Boredom is a really big trigger. Like, you know, you're just sitting around the house bored, you got a big sack of weed and a couple beers and have a party right there. My parents would be like straight up like yelling in my face, like, you know, you fuck, blah, 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 blah. And I'd just be sitting there like, My mind would just be somewhere else, and I would just be thinking about, thank God I got another gram stashed somewhere in my room.
He's had one tool in the tool bag. It's a bad day. I think I'll get high. The sun is shining. My girlfriend broke up with me. I think I'll get high. Kids don't come to treatment and say, I want to stop using drugs, because they're the best thing that ever happened to them. Why would they? It's their one coping skill.
Ted flunked out of an outpatient process. I mean, the very first day they told him how to fake the urine tests. And so from week 1, he was doing it. And then it finally got to the point that Ted had been kicked out of both of our houses, and that was the only way we got him in here. The only way we got him into inpatient treatment was to really push that far.
So the parents become very angry at the kid, and the kid then reacts out. And then you start to create a dynamic that's very negative, that's not going to help the adolescent, nor is it going to help the parent, because the adolescent will rebel against these negative attitudes. One of the interventions that has been shown to be quite effective are family interventions, where you engage the family as part of the treatment.
The choices that Dylan makes will result in either more freedom or a tighter box. And it's all on Dylan.
Oftentimes families are really angry. Parents are really angry with their kids by the time they get to drug treatment because they've lied to them, they've come out, they sneak out the window, they go out at night, they aren't home on time. Parents are really angry. They have a hard time with trust or even positively reinforcing their kids.
Dylan, I'll put it this way. If you give me reasons to put my thumb on you, that's your fault. And if you go crazy because you're so restricted, that's your fault. And you pay the consequences for that. You can go back to Montview to detention.
What a concept.
There are very abnormal patterns in the communication of the family members that develop as a result of the addiction. If not dealt with, those abnormal patterns may contribute to relapse.
How are you going to tell these people, I can't go with you?
I'm not really sure. I just know that I'm a strong enough person that I wouldn't do that kind of a thing.
He doesn't have a lot of skills yet in asking for help when he needs it.
If you really want to break the pattern, you have to identify all of the co-occurring things that are feeding off of each other and address them at the same time in treatment.
It's been getting easier, but
This is not just what do you do for your son or daughter today, but this is affecting the next 50 to 70 years of their life. You may control whether their whole life, measured in decades, not weeks or months, is affected.
This is a treatable illness. Every day, all day, I see kids who are the most serious kids, they get much, much better. Every treatment program all over this country sees kids who get much, much better.
I'm like over it now, but
Ted, I'm so proud of you. And thank you for choosing to do this hard work. Because I'm really looking forward to being around you and having you in our lives. So thank you. And I love you.
All of the drugs, whether it's heroin, alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, all of them activate the dopamine pathway. All of them.
Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that's released with pleasurable events. And it is basically the neurotransmitter system that defines the pleasure pathways in the brain.
The drugs of abuse are 5 times at least more reinforcing and compelling as the things that our brain reward system evolved in the first place to be rewarded by, like food or sex or whatever. And drugs are so much more rewarding to our brains than that. We will do anything. They commandeer our brain reward system and drive our behavior. And that takes powerful treatments to thwart those drives.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nora Volkov, and I want to ask you some questions. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, just let me know. Now, you are how old?
43.
So you've been taking methamphetamine for 10 years?
Yeah, more. Yeah, about
So
11.
how did it start there?
Well, I was doing a lot of coke,
Mhm.
and the meth got me off of coke, for one thing. And meth gave me the same kind of buzz, but it would last longer and would cost less.
How did it affect your life, methamphetamine?
When you're not on it, you just feel so unnormal, and you kind of really like to get some just to get back to a normal feeling.
Place your hand in that box. That's going to get a little warm. We're going to let you rest for about 10-15 minutes to get warm. Do you feel comfortable?
Sure.
With imaging techniques now, we can directly take pictures of the working human brain. So we can compare the brains of people that are addicted to drugs with that of people that are not addicted to drugs under very different conditions. For example, we can stress the dopamine system, which is the system that is activated by drugs.
20 seconds.
So what we want to do now in this study is to see in people that are addicted to methamphetamine how the dopamine cells are functioning. So we're measuring the magnitude of that surge, which is an indication of really, once you stress the dopamine cells, how do they respond? It's equivalent to when, for example, they send you to a cardiologist and they put you on a treadmill. So they stress your heart to see how it responds. Okay, so we have the results. This is your image, and what we've shown is an image of a person of just also a man of the same age and that's not taking any drugs. Let's look at the normal brain, and you see them. The areas in red show very, very high concentrations. This is one of the cells in the brain that's most sensitive to the damaging effects of methamphetamine. Look at your brain and see how that red basically has disappeared. All of this part here is gone. You can clearly see there's much less activity in your brain than in the brain of this person. So one of the concerns is, of course, that as people that take methamphetamine grow older and continue to take it, are they putting themselves at risk for neurological diseases?
That won't go away.
That won't go away, and that will create symptoms. So I mean, when we were speaking, and I'm being candid with you because there's no point of not being it. If you continue to take methamphetamine, this will not recover. I mean, it's bottom line. The other thing that concerned me too is this thing, and it's actually, this is your brain MRI. This brain looks like the brain of a much older person. It looks like the brain of a 60-year-old. He clearly stated to us that he himself is not convinced that he wants to get detoxified. And that's exactly not uncommon, this ambivalence of the person that's addicted, because in a one, it's like they are in love with the drug in a way, but at the same time, there is this hatred because they actually, this loss of control.